Money, 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 money. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Extra Podcast. This is episode number 289. Welcome back. And we have today with us Matt Glezos.
Hello.
Good to have you back, Matt.
Back again.
And Andy Steiger.
Money Sign Steiger is in the house.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, he wants to talk about money. That's the guy.
Wouldn't it be
and
money?
He's got a lot.
Money Sign Tiger?
Yeah, actually, that's true. Money Sign Tiger. That's pretty sweet, by the way.
Because I don't say it's $100, do I?
And we've got the Reverend Dr. Jeff Buckham.
Bucky Buck.
Thank you.
By the way,
J.
I
Bucky Buck?
think ladies and gentlemen need to know that Jeff Bucknam does have an Instagram account. Bucky Buck.
Dr. J. Bucky Buck. drjbuckybuck.
Follow him on Instagram.
I'm going to do that right now.
You bet.
You can follow
When
me.
was the last time you posted something, Jeff?
It was a while ago that I did some posting on the Instagram. I do like the Instagram, though.
You post pictures of Steve from our meetings.
I do.
Leaning back in his chair.
There's nothing better than the awkward
it's funny.
picture pose.
I usually take pictures of funny things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
Glad to see you on.
One of those funny things I'll share with you now.
Okay, do.
Okay, so there are these books that are in our office because every once in a while somebody will drop off a bunch of books, or they'll go through a file cabinet in our building and they'll find some sort of book that was left over there. And we were like, oh, we want to get rid of that. We want to get rid of that book.
I always love that. Hey, I got some crappy books in my house.
Yeah,
Where should I take them?
But what they do is
let's
they
see
leave
if the pastors want them.
They leave them out, kind of a like free take one. Okay, and on Fridays, every once in a while, I just wander around the office a bit and bother people and make sure they can't get their work done. So I was standing by this book table.
Is that if your sermon is done?
No, my sermon's done. Everybody knows when it's done. Don't you worry. On Friday, if you're here on Fridays, you know when my sermon is done.
Start wandering.
So when I'm sitting, I wandered around and I found this one book, and it was a men's ministry manual from I think the 1990s. Okay? And so there's this section on it that says, it's called Some Issues We Face as Men. All right, so here's the list, is bullet pointed. Here are some issues we face as men. 1, violence is an issue we face as men. Aloofness.
What a great word.
That's a great.
Fear of intimacy. Okay? Deception. Sometimes you have lies, adultery, except those sorts of things. These are the challenges. The fifth challenge is women can't be trusted.
That is fantastic.
That is tough.
I was like, what?
What? Clearly the editor.
I'm going to put this on my Instagram account because I find it to be hysterical. One of them, the next one's workaholism. So it's this list of all these things that are actually serious challenges. And then the way they phrased that one was women can't be trusted.
Did you read?
It's not like we think women can't be trusted. It's just that they can't.
That's a fact, and it's a challenge for all men. What were some of the helps around that?
Are dirty liars, right?
Hey, that's the
evil
Greeks.
beast,
Why
lazy gluttons.
you got to put the Greeks in again?
Paul did it, wasn't me.
That's right.
Anyway,
did you find out
That's
what to do
fantastic.
I'm
about
going
that?
to post that on my
That's
Instagram,
good.
I think.
Sweet. Hey, Matt, you
I
had
look forward to that.
Sunday night was a big night for you.
It was.
Yeah,
was
so
a great
tell us
night.
what happened.
Sunday night was our TriCity Church info meeting. Kind of the first time for anyone interested in the Tri-City areas to come and hear the vision. And we had it was a great night. Bunch of people had to bring in extra chairs. Great. I mean, it was exciting. I was really encouraged. It's just seeing a lot of people who, from what I could tell, talk to as many people as you can, but there was a sense of, man, I've been waiting for something like this, or I've been traveling somewhere else to be part of a church, and I want to be here. We made clear that this is going to be about, it's a missional thing. We're planning a church because we want to reach people in the Tri-City area, and we think it's best for the church, those who are the church in the Tri-City area, to be the church there. And so I think that was received well, had encouraging conversations, and And yeah, it's great.
We're right
That's
at
awesome.
We're right at the front edge of it. I mean, it was the first info night. There's another one,
Yes.
and
Yeah,
it's
no.
happening when?
February 26th. It's another Sunday night.
Same location.
Same location, and it's it was so the call was, or the action was, hey, go away, pray, think about this. If this sits well in your heart, like if you want to be part of this, then come on back. And that's going to be our first launch team meeting. So we're going to begin building the culture of the church, teaching through some theology, worship together, get to know each other, and look forward to launch in September. So
If you are the type of person who's interested at all in this, or you know people who are interested, maybe in the Tri-City area, maybe you live in Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadows, that sort of area.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Maybe you would like to contact Matt Glezos and talk to him about this because you weren't able to get to the meeting, whatever. How can they get in touch with you, Matt?
We're going to keep posting information at tricitychurch.ca, and there also you will find my email, just matt@tricitychurch.ca. So send me an email. Love to connect.
Yeah, please do. Seriously, it's quite an opportunity. It's going to be a great church.
No kidding.
We're excited about it.
No, the next one you want for people that actually are really interested in committing, right? So this last one was like a looky-loo kind of like find out what we're interested in, like for people who have been supporting from Northview or Westside, whatever.
Yeah.
But now it's more for people who really want to, like, I'm going to really consider being a part of Tri-City for the upcoming years of my life.
That's right. I'm excited about the idea of being on mission, and I want to be part of making that happen because it's going to require work. We can't just come and sit and sing and leave again. We're going to need to build teams. And so, yeah, that's right. It's for those who are invested. And yeah, I was excited. I can't wait.
So here's what I'm excited about for it. I'm actually excited, first of all, that there's going to be there are some good churches in the Tri-City area, but we need more. There's lots of people, what, 200 and what? Yeah. By some numbers, 210, 250,000 people in that area.
Yeah.
And not a lot of really, Bible preaching churches. And so we're excited about that. But what I'm excited about is that it is actually going to be a campus of 3 different churches. Cross Ridge in Cloverdale, West Side in Vancouver, and us here in Abbotsford. So there will be, if you come from one of those churches, it will have some DNA from each one of those. And, hopefully we'll choose the best parts of each one. Do you know what I mean? And make a church that I think you would feel comfortable in and would have, similarities to those churches, which already have similarities to each other.
Yeah.
Do oftentimes you'll hear that, do we really need another church? And I heard a statistic the other day that in Canada, there are 150 churches of 1,000 or more. In the United States, it's 7,000. And if you were to do
7,000 churches of 1,000 or more.
Oh yeah, and if you were to do the comparison, because it tends to be that Canada is about 10% of the United States.
Yeah, in terms of the population.
Right. So we should have 700 churches around there of 1,000 or more. So
and what are we at?
We're at 150.
150.
So there is a lot of room to grow and to reach into more and more people. And so I think what an awesome opportunity. Coquitlam needs more churches.
And one of the reasons that we're behind church planting and more churches should be behind church planting is because a lot new church plants tend to reach the lost more than existing.
Yeah.
So to be involved in church planting is really exciting for us. We're really happy to be a part of this with Tri-City and happy that Matt's here.
Glad to be here.
Excited to do it. So getting to some questions now, we're in this series called Bling Bling here at Northview, as many of our listeners know, of course, because most of you attend here. You've been here for the last 4 weeks. We've been going through it. We have 1 more week left. And we've been talking a lot about how Christians should spend their money, how our commitment to the gospel should be reflected in the way, or in our pocketbook, in our bank accounts. So, and Jeff, you want to talk a little bit about that today because there's some, you can come across some false understandings of it on both ends.
Yeah, you can fall down on this subject, and we wanted to talk for a few minutes about falling down. I will say that you said that we've talked about how you should spend your money. I think that's been one of the, not critiques, but questions that's been raised by people is you haven't talked enough about how I should spend my money. in the sense that people want to have specific instructions on what should I buy and what shouldn't I buy. And I keep having to reiterate over and over again that that's not actually my job as a pastor. And it's interesting, the scriptures don't get into that. They really don't. There's a huge level of freedom. But that's one of the things I want to talk about. But I'm going to ask the question generally to you guys, and I want you to, I have a couple of answers to it myself we'll get into, but what are the pitfalls here? So you hear a sermon series on money and possessions. Maybe you read a book about it, and it's talking about what the scriptures teach about this. What are the pitfalls? And I'm open to talking about, okay, here are the pitfalls that false teachers get into. Here are pitfalls that, well-meaning Christian people fall into, and maybe those are the same group. I don't know. Where are the dangers here? How can you misunderstand what the scriptures are teaching and apply them in a way that you're not intending to apply?
I'll jump in here. I'm not sure I 100% understand where you're going, but I'll give this a go. We'll see if I'm on the right track, Jeff. One of the things that's gotten me thinking about this is with regards to mission, because I think a lot of people, hear this topic of money, they start to feel guilty about the money that they do have, and they hear how other people don't around the world have less, and so they get in this idea that, well, you just got to give and give abroad, right? And it's give money to the poor, whatever that might be. Maybe it's abroad, or maybe it's even locally. There's somebody that's in need, just give them money. And one of the things that I see as a pitfall is giving blindly and not wisely. And one of the things that really challenged me in this is giving money away can actually be harmful if it's not done wisely.
Yeah, there's a great book about this, When Helping Hurts, Brian Fickert's book. And
that one came to mind.
It's a great book that deals with this very question. So I'm rephrasing you. One of the dangers I think here is that you can see a passage that says, sell your possessions, give to the poor, and thereby store up for yourselves treasure in heaven where moth and rust don't destroy. You can say, oh, well, that means that when I drive by the guy on the side of the street, I'm just supposed to throw the money at him. What I hear you saying, Andy, is, well, maybe, but you really should. There's no prohibition in Scripture. In fact, it would be a good thing for you to think about actually how economics work, how you can give best to what organizations, that there's a level of discernment.
Yeah, what happened for me where I really began to think a lot about this was I was once, as a pastor, was helping in our church with a church plant in Guatemala. And we had the opportunity to help this church buy their church. And really, we could go down there and we could just buy the church for them and just give it to them. And a good friend of mine came along and said, Andy, you should be careful. What you think you're doing, it seems like a good thing. He goes, but you could actually corrupt this pastor. You could actually harm his congregation if you do it unwisely. And so we actually then started thinking about, okay, yeah, what are we doing and how should we best do it?
In what ways would you harm them? I agree with you. How?
So here's one example. It could be so easy to just go, I'm going to send a check of $30,000, $60,000 down to, Juan Carlos in Guatemala and say, buy that church. I mean, what kind of a temptation would that be? I mean,
Juan Carlos himself.
Yeah, to himself, right? I mean,
this is more money than he's probably ever actually felt in his hands. And so the temptation, if there's not checks and balances, the temptation for Juan Carlos, especially the way that he's probably governed his church, is largely through kind of authoritarian rule, which tends to be the way it is in a lot of places. So he actually has access to all this money, and there's a massive temptation now for him. So there needs to probably be structures put in place in order for him to...
Exactly. And the same sort of structures that we need, right? You don't have a missionary that just goes, one day I'm going to become a missionary and I'm going to fundraise, just give me money and I'm going to do ministry. No. We have checks and balances in place to help you so that you, in fact, aren't led astray by that money, that there's people that are guiding you and keeping you accountable. Are
there other challenges, though, that church would have if you gave them money, Matt? Mm-hmm. What kinds of things are they going to... Is there a temptation for them to be in... what's a danger for that in that certain situation?
Well, I think one of the opportunities that's lost is their ownership, their investment in their church. And so it's not ministry related, but I was here listening to a design podcast, and there's an architectural firm that was tasked with rebuilding this whole city that had been decimated by an earthquake in South America. And what they did was they actually built half a house for each family. It was totally done. They did the very basics that was there, and they were criticized for it. But their reasoning was it actually fostered an ownership. And when you go back to these areas, the different families they were caring for, they had the opportunity. They had all the services hooked up. They had the concrete pad, and they had half of a house with the opportunity to expand depending on what the family would need. But it would take them investing in their own home, and they found that they cared more for that home, and the community was developing because it forced, in a sense, I think fostered is a better word, them to help each other out, to build, and then an actual community was being built. In the same way, I think, if we just come and plunk down a church and say, there you go, it's not connected to, part of the joy of being the church is investing our skills and abilities and actually giving. There's an opportunity there for them to grow in their trust by giving to the Lord, giving to this project.
Yeah.
And I think some of that, if we just throw money at something, we're forgetting that whole
There's a level
part.
of codependence that can take place, right? That the people end up depending too much on the church where you are in North America. So there needs to be balances put in place and checks put in place so that they, like you said, are investing in their own work. So there's one example of a danger that because I think it is the case that some people, when they hear someone questioning, hey, maybe we shouldn't give it there, that what they hear is, oh, you're just one of those people who wants to hoard your wealth. That's not true. It's not necessarily true. You can have discernment and wisdom, and ought to have discernment and wisdom along with your commitment to be radically generous. Those are not, those are, you can do both at the same time. Paul, what other dangers are there in the teaching about money and possessions, ways that you can go wrong?
Well, I think when we teach about it here, this is probably it's our sinful nature wanting to express itself, our desires of our hearts wanting to come out and make a law out of it, and make a law like that says, okay, well, I already give 10%, right? Or maybe it's 5% or whatever your percentage is, and you're like, well, I already give that percent, and that's what the Old Testament says. I have to give a tithe, and so I'm giving my 10%, and I'm that's good enough. And this idea of radical generosity, though, when we talk about it, people want to put like a number, they want to put a limit on it, and they don't really get this idea of what it means to be radically generous. I have a heart that wants to.
Zacchaeus gave 50%, by the way.
Right, yeah. Right.
The rich ruler was asked to give 100.
So the rich ruler, Jesus goes and sees the rich ruler and says, sell it all. And he doesn't. He walks away and he keeps everything, and he just wanders away sad. But then Zacchaeus, right? Jesus goes to him. Jesus doesn't even ask him to give anything. He just says, out of his joy of receiving Jesus into his home, just out of his joy, just says, I'm giving.
Yeah.
And you can see that transformation of heart.
And if you continue on down the path, so Luke writes both these stories at the end of Luke. You get the story of the widow's mite, where Jesus commends this woman in Luke 21 for giving all she had. So clearly that kind of radical generosity, to give out of, just give to even when it hurts, is something that Jesus values. But you get in the New Testament, or in the book of Acts, which is written by Luke as well, you get more positive examples. Barnabas, for example, goes and sells a piece of property at one point, and he brings the proceeds to the apostles, lays them at their feet, and says, listen, I want you to use this for the needs of the church as a whole. So here's a positive example of a guy who's been touched by the grace of God, and it's transforming his commitment to the community of faith that he's a part of, right, and those in need. Later on, though, you have just little snippets of things. For example, you have the church meeting in homes, which in that day would have been wealth. I mean, there would be wealthy people. That's how you own a big house that houses that many people. And what you don't find is any description of those people who own those homes being told that they can't have them, that they're not doing well with them. In fact, you go back to Luke chapter 8, what you find is that Jesus' ministry is being described there, because Jesus didn't have a job, right? I mean, he wasn't paid to do this particular work. So you have to ask, well, how did he eat and things? And well, he just made bread and fish.
He multiplied everything.
But no, actually, there are a few ladies who traveled along with them who were wealthy, and they paid the bills. So here's some women who are being radically generous and supporting the ministry of Jesus, and they are examples of how great that in Luke 8, that's what they're being held up as. Wonderful examples of how people ought to use their money well. So my point here is that you notice how different it is in lots of different situations, right?
Right.
That you can use your stuff and your money. You don't need to be Zacchaeus in the sense that you give half, or the rich ruler who gives all, or the widow's mite who gives. Like, all of these people are supposed to prompt you, though, to think, what would it look like for me to be radically generous in my situation? So there's no, in the New Testament, law that is established saying, well, this is the right percentage and this is the wrong percentage. But every one of us wants to have that for ourselves. But I'll add one piece and then have you guys talk about it. We probably want to establish that more for everyone else.
Right.
And that to me is the chief danger in all this, is that all of a sudden I'm looking over at Andy and I'm thinking, Andy, that's a nice shirt. I'm sure you could have gotten that shirt cheaper somewhere else. Couldn't you? Do you not love Jesus? Seriously, you don't love Jesus because you bought an expensive shirt. So apply this to your car, your home, your life. Oh, well, I would never take a trip to Hawaii,
right? Because
that's just wasteful.
It's always the comparison. It's always in relation to. I think we come out hearing a sermon, reading a passage, we're automatically, almost subconsciously doing sort of calculations or evaluations, right, based on the people that we know, based on decisions they've made with their money, and either like you say, maybe it's because we want to condemn them, or because we want to justify ourselves, right, and say that, well, I didn't do that, so I'm in the clear because that's why I feel good. Rather than, so again, we're talking legalism. Rather than what's the weight of my heart? What am I feeling led to as I'm? And I think that's what we're getting to. It always comes down to the heart, because in certain situations, for every person, God, the calling, the sense, the conviction may be different, and that seems to be just the way it always is, that God is calling people to certain things, giving people more for the reason of being able to give, perhaps, or giving people and saying, you don't yet know what this is going to be used for, but the key isn't that you calculate or compare. The key is that you get close to me, come close to me, and then I think some of that giving will be made clear, but we like the checklist better.
Well, you got to run away from this legalism. You absolutely do. Because honestly, the old legalism was about dancing and playing cards. And the new legalism is a lot around money. It really is. It's about, how much are you spending on this or that? And I wouldn't do it that way. And clearly, because I wouldn't do it that way, God really does like me better. At least I'm obeying him better than you. And the truth is, you're in a realm now, again, because there is no law regarding what you should and shouldn't own, right? You're in a realm now where you're just creating extra biblical laws and you're placing them on other people. That is completely pharisaical.
By the way, I should let people know that Jeff was just joking about my shirt. I'm actually not wearing one. But I actually find myself, though, doing this all the time. With particularly,
not wearing shirts.
Yeah,
I don't want it.
It's a whole other podcast. It's a whole other podcast.
Screeching halt right there.
I have a friend. You have these friends that are wealthy, right? Uh-huh. And I constantly find myself, because wealth is always relative, right? You know, because I'm sure I got people who look at me.
Some of your friends think you're wealthy, Andy.
Right. Yeah, I know, right? But so I got my friends that I see as wealthy, and I think, man, those jerks. And I'm constantly wanting to rain down condemnation in my mind on the way that they spend their money, right? Because clearly they're not doing it right. And if I had that money, clearly I would do it the right way.
Right.
Clearly.
So what I'm trying to say is that you need to avoid, we all need to avoid making laws where there are no laws in Scripture, and letting people have certain freedoms. Some people are going to have more than some others. let them sort out for themselves what this looks like in their life, and you sort it out for you, because this isn't about your neighbor. It's about you before God.
Isn't that the challenge? We often hear Jesus, we read a Bible, and we're always identifying with the good guy in the story. And it's this constant reminder that you're not the good guy in the story.
Well, often, yeah.
Yeah, often. Jesus is telling this because he wants to see you change the way you're, in this case, spending your money. Whereas we always want to put it off on, this is about that guy. It's about Matt. It's not about me.
It's about me.
Are there other dangers?
Well, first of all, so if that's true, it is true, then how do we get to that place? I mean, it sounds like we're assuming or we're thinking that the questions we're asking coming out of this teaching is, okay, what's the level or what's the point where I feel, in relation to everyone else, I feel justified? But that's the wrong question. We're saying that's the wrong question. So what's the right question in terms of, as we're coming out of this, that we should be either asking ourselves or maybe like in community groups, because there is a in our sanctification, we're supposed to speak into each other's lives. So there may be at the right time, but the right question is what?
I think one of the right questions is given my circumstance at the present time, giving the requirements God's placed on me to care for my family, given reasonable cost of living, all that sort of thing. Some people have more debt load, that sort of thing.
Right.
Am I giving to a point where I need to trust God to provide it? Mm-hmm. And where I end up praying, give me this day my daily bread. Like, am I giving? That's what I mean by radical generosity. I don't know what that line is, though, for you.
No.
And I have no idea. And quite honestly, I'm going to preface all that by saying, when I consider the grace of God and what he's done for me, like, how does that affect my money? And practically speaking, I think this is a conversation you need to have with your spouse. If you're single, I think you need to have this conversation maybe in a community of other friends. To be honest, we don't talk about money very much. Yeah. Say, look, here's what I plan on doing or am doing. Tell me, help me think this through. Do you think this is a reasonable amount? Does this place me? And there should be a tension in your heart. Honestly, if you're giving to a point where it's a little bit stretching, honestly, you should just hug that tension and say, "Yep, I'm right. I think in the river now."
Right. So for people, like for some people, this is going to be it's going to be a small percentage, but for some people, it's going to be a big percentage to create that kind of a tension, right?
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I'd add one more danger to this. One of the dangers is that if you have more, you tend to think 10% is right, and I'm going to push a little bit and say, actually, if you have more, the Lord expects more of you. He does, and I say that broadly to all of us. The Lord is expecting more of North American Christians when it comes to this than He is Guatemalans Christians or the Thai Christians who I know. He expects a lot of us. So if the Lord has blessed you with a lot, He expects a lot with that, okay? A 5-talent dude is what you are. So you better be thinking about doubling the 5 talents for the Lord's sake.
Well, and when we think about like the stats that you shared in the sermon, and when I preached Sunday night, I shared the same ones, about the amount of money that it would take to solve serious world hunger. So to stop people from starving to death is what, 24 billion?
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
That's a high number these days. There are some reports recently. Steve Weens, our executive pastor, I got him onto this, and he's very interested in this and statistics. And the most recent estimates are closer to $15 billion a year.
Right. So I mean, if you had $15 billion a year, and if Christians gave 10%, if every Christian in America, it was
just
right,
the U.S.
gave 10%, it would be $130 billion more.
Yeah, 133. Yep.
$133 billion more
than what we currently have.
Is currently given.
Yeah.
Like these numbers should be shocking.
Right.
And a lot of people in the congregation Saturday night when I was there, I mean, they were shocked, which is good. But like you said, let's not just leave this as a thing that we talk about, but let's actually get some action.
So there's a danger.
Yeah.
The danger is that you you, and I tried to press this, I think, on people at the end of my sermon this weekend, trying to say, look, the temptation here is to think that you've done your due diligence because you've talked about it all the time.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of subject that prompts dialogue. It will after the sermon. You might get mad at me for preaching a thing, or you might get frustrated, and I don't know if that's the right way, and what about this? And you probably would have brought up some of the dangers we're bringing up here, and those would all be the right things to say. We could dot the I's and cross the T's and have conferences about it and write books and read the books and read, report on the books we've read and written. But at the end of the day, James calls us to be doers of the word,
right,
and not hearers only.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned that there are no changes that take place in the life of a person after you spend 5-6 weeks talking about this in church. People just nod and say, that you don't actually stop and reflect on it and think, okay, either I'm going to change the amount I give, right? Or I'm going to be affirmed in what I'm already doing and feel like I've come out the other end of this thinking, okay, this is about right.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a call to action regardless. A call to actually
right. And I think,
something.
Isn't that what Luke is showing us with the contrast of these two gentlemen, and that this whole scene,
the rich ruler and
we
Zacchaeus.
see the fruit of Zacchaeus's love for Christ and the grace of God on his life and God's generosity towards him is leading him to be incredibly generous outwardly. And the generosity of God towards the rich man, he rejects it and says, I'm keeping my stuff.
Right.
And I think that's something that we might miss is the joy of, like, the internal benefit of all of this isn't, I mean, there's external. We want to help. We want to, we can see that. But like I think we talked about last time in last podcast, but there's a greater joy for the one doing the giving. And not only that, of being Christ-like, of imaging God, of saying this is giving glory to God. Like that is able to happen when you are responding to the work of God in your life and doing it in a way that if you're giving in a meager way, you are not going to be able to enjoy that. You're not going to, the growth in faith, all of those things. And so that's, I think we're coming to that in this sermon coming up, investing in what's really valuable in terms of the eternal perspective and for our own selves in our pursuit of Christ and wanting to grow. There are few things that will do that as much as actually giving in this way. And it's a joy.
I'll give one more danger.
Yeah.
Well, many as I can. I think that in this discussion, the more you get talking about money and possessions, the more and more you talk about it, the more and more, the closer to asceticism you start claiming is right. Do you understand what I mean? You start thinking to yourself that the good life is actually had in the denial of all the material good things around me. And part of the reason we began this series in Proverbs 30 is to try to show that poverty stinks. Right? It's not a good thing. And we're ending it with 1 Timothy chapter 6, which has one of the most beautifully blatant statements in the entire Bible about this. It says, no, God gave you all these things that you might enjoy them, which is so non-ascetic. It isn't. So in other words, you like your bike, great. You buy a bike and you like it and it's got the right stuff on it that is gonna use it, and you're gonna not hold on to it, but share it with somebody you might want to use it. Enjoy it. Like, you just have a smile on your face while you're riding the thing, thanking God for what it is that you've gotten, or the house, or the carpet, or the roof, or the car, or like.
It's funny though.
All these things, they're not bad things, but the temptation as you go through this is to not think that way. So there's a tension that Paul's calling you to. Look, you should enjoy what it is the Lord's given, but also be really rich in good works. Like really looking at opportunities to be radically generous with other people. You can do both.
It's not either or.
And generosity can look different in different ways. Like, I've seen people who make their car available to the church or to missionaries, or make their home available. For my wife and I, one of the things that we constantly think about is we host a community group with young adults at our house. And our carpet has taken a real beating over the years. And one day we're going to have to replace it. But for us, it's like No. Thank you, God, for the carpet. Thank you, God, for the house. And we're going to use this as ministry. And that's a good thing.
And when you buy new carpet, I hope you buy a carpet you like. And I hope when you run your toes through your carpet, there's a joy that comes to you for living in a material world that God made, where people who He made in His image have constructed such a cool thing as comfy toe jingling carpet.
A loom.
Right.
Is that what they make it on?
But you know what I mean? Like there's you thank God for a well-made thing, and you rejoice in it. At the same time, knowing that, you know what, it's a danger. John Piper, at one point in a sermon I heard him preach, actually years ago in Seattle, he's talked about his leather couch and how much he loves his leather couch. Mm-hmm. And he said it's the most dangerous thing he owns. He said because he loves it so much that he finds himself wanting more leather couches. And when he sits in this leather couch, he's not sure if his heart, if it's preparing him to follow Christ with more vigor. He just wants to sit there.
Oh man!
So he's having this like existential crisis over his leather couch while he's sitting in it. But like I listened to that, and I thought, yeah, but brother, that's exactly the challenge, right? On the one hand, that seems to be what the scriptures teach. Yes, you should be delighting in the leather couch. What a great world you live in, that they have leather and you can sit on it and it squishes around you, and yet at the same time be totally cognizant that, man, this thing could drag my heart away. Well, all this stuff, I could start thinking I need more and more and more and more of this to be happy.
Well, and not even just that, not even just more of them, but this one, and it needs to stay in pristine condition.
Right.
And so I've got to put the blanket or the plastic over over the couch, because God forbid somebody could sit on it, and it's going to wear or whatever it might be, right? Like enjoy the things that God's given you, and realize that they're only for a time.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And right. This is one of the big dangers, though, I think, is that, again, that you can see why it is that the early church was drawn toward asceticism, why it is that they abandoned material things, because they were like, well, geez, the Bible, sell your possessions, give it to the poor. And why it is that the Roman Catholic Church for years had their priests take vows of poverty. And even to this day, do they still do that?
I don't know.
You're Greek. You should know that.
Okay, maybe we should. Greek Orthodox
I was
is
gonna say,
different
wasn't that
than
Orthodox?
Catholicism, but
you
we could.
You sure they're different?
Yep, we have a different symbol. And
You were eating some yogurt this morning. Was that
that's
Greek
right.
style?
That was That was Mediterranean style. I'm glad you brought that up. It gives me a chance to highlight Liberté yogurt. That is the best
sponsor
yogurt
this week.
That's
Liberté?
right. Sponsor Liberté.
Or if Liberté
9%.
Yogurt wants to
Liberté
sponsor
yogurt.
our podcast,
Yes.
I'm just going to come out and say we're cool with that.
Yeah. We will accept cases.
We will accept Liberté's generosity.
Have you guys ever had the realization that sour cream and yogurt are pretty much the same thing?
Plain yogurt
Andy?
and sour
No.
cream.
I think the yogurt you're eating might be past due.
No, and I'm telling you
you're
right
right.
now, if you've ever had Greek yogurt, it is so thick, it might as well be sour
That's right.
cream.
That's right. It's like the hair on our heads or our backs. It's
For some of us, Matt.
That's just Andy's back. We just saw it because his shirt was
that
off.
Is that
hurt.
too far? I didn't know where the line was on the podcast.
You found it.
Okay.
Yeah, back here was it.
So
Yeah, we don't know when Jeff has his shirt off, actually.
one more question that came in regarding this series. He's an owner of a couple of local businesses. And so he is wondering, he's like, okay, I'm really enjoying the series, and it's challenging me in the way I give and things like this. But what about spending locally in order to support local owners who can then give generously? Like, shouldn't we be encouraging people in their spending in this way in order to
Sure, but
help? And so he's talking kind of an economic question.
I'm not going to argue
about all this.
I'm not going to argue for this and say that this is a biblical mandate. Just so you know, like, it's hard. This is one of those areas, again, of Christian freedom that, just so you know, is very wise. Right? To spend and buy locally is wise. It drives the local economy. It puts your friends and neighbors in work. There's all sorts of benefits to it. But if you decide to get stuff on Amazon, you're not sinning against God.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
I want to be careful of that, because there are sometimes some social justice folks who will walk along and they'll start connecting the dots. This is what I mean by, like, the legalism that comes into this. They'll start connecting the dots. That basically, if you go into Vancouver and you buy something, well, that you could have bought in Abbotsford, like a car, and paid, another $5,000 in Abbotsford, but you got it cheaper in Vancouver, you just sinned against the holy God, because he wants you to buy at the local car shop who's overcharging you. But
there's no law about
that's
that
not a law
in the Bible.
But
or
is it
anywhere.
wise? Do you see the difference? Is
Totally.
it wise? Yeah, yes, absolutely, it's wise, because there's a lot of economic benefits to it.
It reminds me of fair trade and different things like that, right?
Right, which is great.
Good stuff, but you got to think about it.
Right, and there's some fair trade things that are better than others and all that sort of thing. But again, you're not sinning. Some people are gonna freak out. I really don't like Walmart. I was in there the other day and I did, but you're not sinning by shopping at Walmart, and yet some people will freak out about it. Do Walmart's business practices though reflect what the scriptures would call them to? Yeah, probably not at places, and they should be called to account on those grounds. And so if you decide that you don't want to shop at Walmart because of the way that they treat some of their workers in Asia, although there's debate. Just so you know, if you're in China and you talk to some people, like in some villages, like Walmart's a good job. Like making some of the Walmart stuff is providing for entire families, and so if they don't make it, that entire family is out of work. Does that mean that we should justify the low prices? That you see, this gets really into detail,
When
but
you
again,
get into all of this stuff with world economics and
Right,
global, I mean, it gets complicated.
but my
and
fear
tough.
in all of it is the
Yeah.
complication of all of it, of economics and how all this works, ends up becoming a cop-out for us to say, well, you know what, I'm just going to do what I want. And meaning that I'm just going to spend whatever I want on me, wherever I want to spend it. And I'm just, it's just too complicated to worry about all that stuff. You know what? No, it's not.
There's also that jaded, everything's corrupt anyway, so it doesn't, I might as well just do what I want to do. Even if I give it somewhere, then who knows where but I think that's a cop.
This is another aspect of this discussion that probably should be added here. I do recognize there are 4 pastors sitting in a room talking. So when I ask the question, the answer is obvious. But where should people be giving? Because we're doing this in a local church,
buddy.
and the cynical people in the church will be sitting there thinking to themselves, "You're just doing this so that you can, pad the bank account of the local church and go and spend more money on whatever it is that I don't like you spending money on."
I got an answer for you, man. One of my pet peeves is when you're giving, and this gets back to this idea of giving wisely. Give to what is holistic, wise giving. So I think about Compassion International, for example. You want to help children in poverty. Well, man, do they got a great way of doing that? Education, food, the gospel.
Through a local church.
I mean, does it get any wiser than that? That's why I love Compassion. And I give to Compassion, and I want to support that. I think at other places, though, they'll feed some kids, but they're not sharing the gospel with them. Or maybe they got an education program, but they're not. It's not through a local church or anything like that. They're not buying. There's so many different aspects about it. Organizations like Compassion, to me, man, do they hit the mark. Even the amount that they're spending on advertising and whatever, how they're using your money. Great organization.
I've thought about in my sermons addressing at points this, just in passing or little comments here or there, saying to people, I'm not just talking about what you give to the local church. In fact, I don't care what you give. I made one comment in a sermon to that effect, and I mean that. It doesn't matter to me what you give to North. Like I've said before, God's going to take care of His church, right? His bride's fine. I will say this, though. A part of the reason I haven't said that too much is because I don't want people to think the opposite, that you don't have a responsibility to give to the local church, because you do. The local church is what God's doing in the world. The local church is the apple of His eye. Absolutely what the Lord is doing. And do local churches spend the money as wisely as they ought? No, not all the time. I've been in leadership. But are there factors about which you know nothing, right, regarding how they spend the money? Yes. I'll give you a quick example. We were told a number of years ago we had pews in our service. We used to have pews here, and they told it. We got emails from people. We got rid of our pews saying we should send these to Africa. We had people getting really mad at us because we decided not to send the pews to Africa. Do you know how much money it costs to send the pews to Africa?
Did someone find out? Did someone?
Like, it's unbelievable the amount of shipping costs that would cost. You know what would be better is to actually just let the Africans build pews with some of the money that you got for the pews that you sold to the camp, which is largely what we ended up doing with that sort of money. There are lots of issues like this. I've had people criticize, oh, you have video screens in your hallways. That's such a waste of money. Do you realize that having the video screens in the hallways of our church makes it so that we don't have to expand our seating capacity? Do you know how much money it will cost for us to expand seating capacity and put in a balcony or something like that? Millions of dollars. And I can get, a bunch of people watching a video screen, maybe 10 people. That's 10 more chairs. How much that cost? Like $500? That's a good deal.
On those bleachers on the west side, there's like 30 people.
I know,
there.
but my point here is that it oftentimes more complicated, and the church is, if it's being run biblically in the sense that it has a plurality of elders, you can be confident that even if you don't totally agree with every time that they spend money on this or that, it is going through a grid of a bunch of brothers and sisters in Christ who are thinking a lot about these issues and share your convictions. Right? But what some people do is, well, I know better, so I'm not going to give to the local church, and they're corrupt or they're whatever. I'll tell you, Jesus commended the widow for giving the mite to a far more corrupt temple system than the local church is. So I'm telling you that I think that Jesus believes that the local church is a place you should be giving your money. But it's not the only place.
No, but it is an indication of your heart. If the church is not a place but a group of people, then part of our worship, part of our response to God as the church is to give, and if you're there on a Sunday, you're receiving from, you're sitting with the lights on, with all the things, you're benefiting, and if you're there, hopefully your heart is there, which means you believe in the mission of the. I mean, that's really, I think, the issue. If you don't believe in the mission of the church or have confidence in the leadership, that's maybe a separate. Maybe you shouldn't be part of that church. But if you're here and you believe that, then that's also where your heart is, your money will be. And so I think that sort of difference, people come to that point easily, but I think it's more an issue of not understanding what it means to be the church, and maybe an issue of the heart of whether I really, really believe and love what's going on in this, my particular local church. Then your money should be there too.
Good. All right, that was about it for today. Thanks again for listening, and we will see you on the weekend.